Well, I've been screaming for it for about 3 episodes now, and we finally got some backstory and character development. It's just a shame that a lot of it has come at the cost of once again ripping straight from the canon without giving it any context, or seemingly ripping scenes straight out of Game of Thrones. But we'll get to that. I hope you find Pablo good looking because we're going to be seeing a lot more of him in this episode. Let's go! The episode opens at Spartan bootcamp, and all these kids look like they're having the fucking time of their life. Like, Jesus, sort it out. You're meant to be upset and kidnapped from your family. Look at this goober. Yeah, he looks real upset he's in the Spartan program. Paramount, if you're going to go with this tone, you need to convince your child actors that they're upset about where they are. I'm not buying into this. Fuck me swinging. Little Johnny's then in a room and he's upset and he wants to go home and then holy Halsey, oh, you Jesus. Her de-aging looks quite good. And Mama Halsey's like, I've already identified you as being the possible leader of the Spartans, little Johnny. You're going to go on to do great things. I love you. Back on Halsey's ship and...
Long John Silver. At your humble service.
Staring out the window into slipstream space, as he often does. He remarks to Cortana that it looks a bit different from last time, and she explains that he's not actually seeing it the way it's meant to be perceived, as it's a series of complex mathematics. She goes on to explain, and then John says you're ruining it. Bit of a callback to the second episode with Panda Bait, and I don't mind it. At least it's building consistency within its own show. Halsey and Creeper then have a brief discussion about the artifact and how it might connect to something bigger and it might be an intelligence, and then Creeper's like, why is John so special? Why don't you love me? And Halsey explains that she can't explain why the John's so special because the plot's making it up as it goes. Cut to a flying dumbbell with Soren, who I'm now going to call Rubber Arm, and Panda Bait, and they're on their way to Madrigal City on the planet of Madrigal. Soren's rather insistent on getting paid, and Panda Bait's like,
hey, China's still cool. You'll pay later.
The show finally takes a slower opportunity between these two characters to explore a little bit of backstory about Soren and how he killed his father. It's nice to see the show taking time out from being up its own ass to actually explore these characters a little bit. Oh, speaking of being up your own ass, hey! I knew I was hanging around this show for some reason. Say what you will about Showtime, they know what they're doing in regards to gratuitous nudity shots. There's a bit of back and forth between the Not Blue Team gals about where John is, and they explain that he's away, and then it seems that Not Kelly's removed her chip from her own ass despite having seen John do it with the assistance of Cortana. It's a good thing these Spartans learn quickly, eh? I know in the previous episodes I was calling her Not Linda because she had the sniper rifle, but why I'm calling her Not Kelly will become pretty clear shortly. Back to Eridanus 2, and John puts his helmet on. Yes, finally. He looks good in his armor. Please keep your helmet on for... And it's gone again. I love this shot. It's like the show is intentionally baiting fanboys about how he's often taking his helmet off. This shot is a tracking close-up that goes on for 8 seconds. 8 seconds of John holding his helmet with you seeing nothing else. Geez, I hope you weren't attached to the idea of John having a helmet on, guys, because that's not what this show is about. If you don't believe me, there's a bit coming up that really rams this home. John does a little bit of memory map to ground and then remembers where roughly he's buried the magic bullshit device. Back to the flying dumbbell on Madrigal, and Soren and Panda Bait have landed well back from the city in order not to draw attention to themselves. Again, where have I seen this before? It's not ripping off, it's an homage, alright? Cut to the Game of Thrones governor, and he's sharply dressed with some red flares. Yeah. Also, I just want to point out here that, what were these two cars doing? They're about to run straight into each other. Is this meant to be him being a dickhead? Because he's actually stopped an accident by doing this. Fucking top bloke. We pan around the city a little bit and there's watchtowers with guards and guns and batons, and evidently the UNSC is being a bit overbearing in this instance. But hey, when they drive like they're in New Delhi, can you fucking blame them? GOTG then jumps in his fucking Tesla truck and they drive away. In case you missed the subtlety of the black and red of the costumes.
Nazi!
Panda Bait and Rubber Arm then go walking down looking for some allies in the market. The best place to find allies is at your local market. Buy friendly. And Panda Bait finds an old friend who tells her to come to her father's memorial tonight. Easter egg! Back to formerly Not Linda, now Not Kelly, and she's providing a bit of weapon maintenance to her firearm. Not Kelly then has a rebellious moment where she decides to put gun lube in her hair and turn it pink red.
Oh my God! I'm gorgeous!
You go, girl. Thus completing her transformation from Not Linda to Not Kelly. For those non-hardcore fans in the audience, it's because Kelly, when she came to the Spartan 2 program as a girl, had dyed hair in the Fall of Reach novel. Cut to Super Nerd, and she's examining the magic bullshit device. And while Mummy's away, the daughter will play. She summons the 3 Spartans from Not Blue Team because she needs them to interact with the device to find out what makes it tick. We get the impression that Miranda is not a big fan of the Spartans and it might be reciprocated, as she calls them by their numbers and not their names. She also wants to determine what makes John so special, if anything. Then not Fred's like, it's because he's the Master Chief. Okay, I'm going to stop this right here. Master Chief Petty Officer is a rank in the Navy. It's not the Master Chief. John is a Master Chief Petty Officer. He's not the Master Chief. Master Chief's not some lofty title that's been invented because he's a superhuman. It's a rank. Can we please move past this? His fellow Spartans would call him Chief or John, and other UNSC personnel would call him Chief or Sir or Master Chief, depending on where they are in position to his rank. I only bring this up because they really emphasize the every single time they say his rank. Come on, showrunners, figure it out. It's not hard to Google the UNSC, which is based on the American Navy's ranks. Sort it out. I accept that John and his rank of the Master Chief will be launched to fame and stardom after the events of Reach and the events of the first Halo, but this show is well before all those events. So please, showrunners, stop it. Super Nerd then asks Kai to remove her helmet, and cut to John's removed helmet. See, the showrunners are aware of it, they're doing it on purpose now. And appropriately enough, Long John Silver's digging for treasure in his backyard with a shovel. I'm sorry. It's the year 2552. He's in power armor and he's digging with a shovel. Even if he was just in his Mjolnir armor, he would be powering through that dirt. How has he only dug that dirt? My God. John then discovers it's not the magic bullshit device he's buried in the backyard, but a time capsule with all his childhood drawings in it. Jeez, it's a good thing Mum and Dad didn't just throw him out or burn him, otherwise there'd be nothing to grapple with as the plot moved forward. Back to Panda Bait and Rubber Arm, and they're attending the memorial of her father, and Panda Bait's upset that the gathering of people is so small and that none of them have rised up to fight the UNSC. True to form, she attempts to start an uprising which draws the attention of the GOTG's goons, and then a fight ensues. Fortunately for Panda Bait, Rubber Arm's there to protect her, and yeah, I don't care. Back to Super Nerd and the Spartans, and they're trying to touch the keystone to make it do some stuff. Nothing happens for Not Fred, so then Not Kelly comes in. Not Kelly takes her helmet off to reveal her pink hair, and Miranda's a bit like, "Oh, girlfriend, what have you done to your hair?" Not Kelly's then obviously offended and says that you don't like us very much, do you? Super Nerd's like, yeah, look, I'm not particularly fond of you. And then Not Kelly's like, well, maybe you should learn a bit more about us before you start using us in your show. Oh, wait, that's me. Sorry, guys. Can't help but draw out those meta references when they pop up. Not Kelly then tags the keystone and then nothing happens. Jokes aside, there's a little bit of character development for each of the Spartans here, delivered in a passive-aggressive way to a superior, and it's actually good for drama. I don't mind this. Back to John's family home, and the only thing Cortana does in this entire episode is act as a glorified AR assistant to John as he relives the memories of his family. John then walks around his virtual designer home and discovers secrets from his past, including that he met Dr. Halsey
In this very room.
Halsey and Creeper start having a bit of anxiety that John's going to start remembering that he was stolen from his family and not adopted. Oh my God, this is so dumb. Why didn't they just stick to the canon where the children knew that they'd been taken away from their families and they'd been called upon to serve?
Per Naval Code 45812, you are hereby conscripted into UNSC Special Project codenamed Orion 2, also known as Spartan 2. Your parents are gone. The planet Reach is your new home. Your fellow trainees are your new family. Each of you has been hand-selected and called to serve.
This is adding drama for the sake of drama, which the show wouldn't need to do if they'd established the Covenant in any capacity at all and the threat they actually pose to humanity, where the drama of the show should be coming from. Anyway, while John's bouncing around in AR mode, we get some super duper close-ups of his face because having his face exposed in every episode wasn't enough already. Halsey grows more concerned that John's remembered something, but she can't see his face, so she can't determine how he's feeling. Geez, it'd be nice to have a show where the actors were committed to staying inside their costumes and helmets and then delivering nuanced performances that are in keeping with the traditions of the Halo canon. Anyway, John remembers that the artifact wasn't actually in the house, it was buried in a cave out in his backyard. Back on Reach, and Super Nerd is showing the Spartans all her little alien toys that she's been researching. Or, to be more accurate, she's upset that the artifact hasn't responded to any of them, and Not Kelly is bouncing around grabbing all the toys and having the time of her life. I could be really bitter about this scene and how Not Kelly's taken her chip out and that's why she's having these interactions. But from a storytelling perspective, it's quite good because they deliver a little bit of backstory to the Covenant and their weapons. You get a sense of the Spartans' history with the Covenant as well. Not Fred's banter is absolutely on point here.
Correct.
This is the humanity behind the Spartans, and it's fantastic. You didn't need to fuck with the canon or emotional palettes to get this stuff and the nuance from the soldiers who've been together since they were like 6 years old. Just because they're augmented humans doesn't mean they don't have personalities. And Not Fred is a brilliant example of that.
Also correct.
Again, very much like the John from the games. Then the plot gets advanced by a very logical reason. Turns out the Spartans have been at war with the Covenant for years and they've learned some of their language. Who fucking knew? Super Nerd gets all tingly, just like her mother, when she finds out that she can actually use the Spartans to her advantage here. Back to Madrigal, and the Not Jawas have stripped the flying dumbbell of all its parts, and Rubber Arm and Panda Bait are now grounded. Soren decides he's going to go knock some heads, and Panda Bat's like, no, if you do that, you're not going to get paid. We need to go see my auntie. Old Rubber Arm, being a rubber arm, loves money, so he decides to hang around. Cut to some more Showtime nudity featuring the GOTG, feeling right at home in a scene straight out of Game of Thrones. Isn't this set in the year 2552? I get that some planets would be a little bit backward, but what's with this ancient medieval architecture? This is reminiscent of an ancient Turkish bathhouse. It's ridiculous. Panda Bait then goes and visits her auntie, only to discover that her father squandered the family fortune, there are no generals left, and for some reason he went off into the desert, found some mystics, and that's why he decided to fight the UNSC. Sexy assassin lady's hot on her heels and is slicing and dicing like she's in an episode of Game of Thrones, and then Rubber Arm remembers that he's in a sci-fi and starts shooting at her. With the illusion of Game of Thrones broken, she yeets herself out the window and eats shit. Rubber Arm then grabs Panda Bait, but not before giving her a moment to mourn her auntie, throws her on the back of a motorbike, and then they motocross their way across the city in order to escape. Also, I'm not sure when the take for this shot started, but I'm tipping it started about here. Working with sand is hard.
I don't like sand.
Back to Super Nerd and the Spartans, and they're filling in a little bit more backstory about how they had pets, and then ultimately they either had to kill them or Halsey killed them.
Nazi!
Paramount, are you incapable of reading the actual law and applying it correctly, to the point where you just rip something off from the Kingsman?
Shoot the dog.
Fuck me. Back to John and Halsey, and he must be pissed off because he's putting his helmet back on and they're going to drive down the road to this hole in the ground that he's seen in his visions. Back to the lab, and Super Nerd and Not Kelly have worked late into the night deciphering the alien language. The two gals have a bit of a bonding session, and then Kelly's like, you haven't told me the full truth.
Oh my God! I'm hideous!
Indicating that her hair is not quite as pretty as she thought it was. Miranda states that she's a bit struck by how human the petty officer is acting. See, petty officer, Master Chief, their ranks. And she goes on to say that Dr. Halsey doesn't tolerate things that are her creations that start acting human. This is an ominous shift, obviously, for Not Kelly, as moving forward she might be worried about Halsey's repercussions. Miranda then has a monologue about how Halsey doesn't tolerate failures or imperfections as John drives to this new meme template, jumps into the ground and finds himself a magic bullshit device. The episode ends with Halsey having a bit of a joygasm and Chief staring menacingly at her and the object. Super Nerd's monologue ends with her carefully not calling Dr. Halsey mother even once, and stating that she does not tolerate glitches. And the camera slowly zooming in on the AI port on the back of Long John Silver's head, which is totally irrelevant because Cortana is shoved up his brain. But I imagine the implication is that Dr. Halsey's planning on using Cortana to control John when he starts asking too many questions. For the sake of getting through this in a reasonable time frame, I mashed some of those scenes together. If you watched the episode, I'm sure you've got the gist of what I was getting at, and if you're just here for my commentary, you're welcome. I've saved you some Paramount ass pain by editing this together in under 13 minutes for a 50-minute episode. So the bulk of my nitpicks have already been done throughout the commentary itself, so I'm just going to touch on a few points that came out this week. There's been a bit of commentary saying that this is the best episode of Paramount Halo so far, and I'd agree with that. However, the statement that it gets better each week is a bit of a stretch. This episode certainly was better, but even a broken clock is accurate twice a day. I personally am glad they've started developing their own characters and also fleshing out the Covenant through the stories of the Spartan 2s. But this stuff should have been happening probably 2-3 episodes ago. You're now approaching the mid-season, and we're only just starting to learn about the characters that we're supposed to care about. Also, I'm not sure what they're going to do next week to rival the super close-up of Pablo's face. What are they going to get inside his mouth? Something that really jumped out at me in this episode, because we got a little bit more time with Not Blue Team, was their armor. The designs are consistent, and they've got highlights on their wrist guards and on their chests. Across the board, they look uniform and pretty cool. So why the hell is Chief the only one that's fully green? If you're going for consistency here, surely he would have the same dark armor with green highlights, right? The fact that he takes his helmet off and on all the time means I've seen inside and out of it plenty enough to identify that this is not the same as the other Spartans. Again, if you're going to commit to your silver timeline, make Chief the same as the other Spartans. Don't just call him special and change the colour of his armour to be consistent with the canon so that you're drawing in fans because it looks like Halo. Commit to the silver timeline and change some things, or commit to the canon and do it properly. At the moment, it's towing the line between the two and it's pleasing nobody. While I was happy with the world building and character development in this episode, we're still left asking the question of what the hell's going on with the Human Covenant War and what's the go with the actual Covenant itself. Hey, maybe it's coming, slowly but surely, right? I don't want people to get the misunderstanding that I think the show is good now just because they had one good episode. I feel like this is the Mandalorian to Star Wars. After all the crap that we got with the sequels, you finally get a good episode and you're like, yeah, it's the best thing ever. Don't be fooled, it's still crap. This is the bare minimum standard that they should be delivering every week. Expect better from companies that are trying to take your money and producing content that you're supposed to enjoy. Hold them to a higher standard, or they're going to keep producing this stuff that's bare minimum standard that's not good enough. But remember, I'm just a brainless lump who's hoping this show has finally turned a corner.
Give us one more chance.
Hooroo.